The shenanigans don't stop. There's more. There's more. Everybody thought that the show was over when there's this victory yesterday here in Fulton County, but it's really kind of not a victory. It's a Democratic primary, which means you still need to go to war with the Republican side in November. Are you guys ready to talk about this? It's been a while. Hi, how are you? Hope you've had a great week so far. Today is Thursday. It's been a very busy week. And today, what we are going to do is not waste a lot of time. There's a hearing happening right now as we speak. And that hearing involves one, Ashley Timmelson. Ashley is a whistleblower. We've been talking a lot on this channel about some of the Fani shenanigans. And although it was election week, the other thing that comes to mind here is Ashley was one of the first people to say, hey, there's some shenanigans happening in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to the point where the United States Congress is looking at it. And right now, guess what's happening as we speak right now, guys? Ashley is testifying right now in front of the Georgia Senate Committee on this particular issue. What I want to do with you, she didn't testify for a long time. It's live, so we're going to pop in and see what's going on. As concerned citizens of the United States, we want to see what Ashley's talking about. We want to see what she is saying to the Georgia Senate Committee on this matter. She's represented by an attorney, and she's represented by a few other people that are there as stakeholders. We can see our friend in the background feverishly taking notes, right? Because this is a bipartisan committee that's listening to this. We have Democrats and Republicans. I believe that's Senator Jones. I have it on mute right now. But before we do that, I want to see who we have in the building. I really just want to listen to Ashley's part, and then we will go from there in our conversation. There's a lot that's happened this week in Fulton County. We know that the Democratic primary took place this past Tuesday. We know that Fani Willis called Jim Jordan a clown. I released something for you guys on that. We talked about it. It seems like we want to have a longer conversation on it. And we will, trust me. I'm working on a weekly recap because so much has gone on. Nathan Wade apparently was at this celebration thing with Fani. A week ago, Joycelyn Wade filed a new document like, hey man, where is it? Where's the money? I have actual health conditions that I need help for. And you're over here doing that. We're still married. We're not divorced yet. It's American as apple pie. Do you know that Nathan Wade did another interview last night? And you guys know me and my PR background. I'm just watching. He went from ABC for the initial interview to MSNBC last night. And it's just like, oh, Nathan, what are you up to? You writing a book? Crazy. Listen up. What are you doing, Nathan? You're on all these news platforms all of a sudden. We still need to settle this divorce thing. But at Fani's celebration last night, and I say that in air quotes, guys, not to be disrespectful. I say it because it is a primary on the Democratic side. She just simply had to beat out her challengers, and the citizens of Fulton County, not including myself, voted her to stay in office. We all have our opinions on that. But they voted for her to stay. Now, does that mean it's over? Absolutely not. Because you have a very strong Republican challenger to face in November that has a support. And even though Fani says this young woman has 4 years of experience, I mean, that's obviously a huge contradiction because Nathan had no experience with criminal law, very minimal. And he became the special prosecutor for a case against a former president. Where that happens in any other jurisdiction or state or county is a little weird. So don't give up on justice, ladies and gentlemen, because it's not done. It's not. Anyway, let's see who we have in the building, do a quick ad read, and then we will jump in and see what is happening in this Senate committee hearing here in Georgia, Fulton County, and chatting with Ashley to see what she has to say. Ashley is the woman that is here on the second to the left, and she is next to the gentleman in the gray suit. Ashley is the whistleblower and she formerly worked with Fani Willis's office, and she has spoken out not only on the state level in Georgia, but to Jim Jordan, other members of the United States Congress, and of course, the United States Senate is now looking at the misappropriation and misuse of funds here in Fulton County by this district attorney's office. Okay, so we're going to look at that. I also want you to notice, and I'll make this big for a second before we jump in. This Senate committee is a little bit smaller than usual. We have the minority leaders that are here, and we also have the majority leaders that are here as well. We're going to get right into it. I can't wait, but let's see who we have in the building. We haven't streamed in a few days, so it's going to be nice to connect with our community here. Starting off up top, who's first? Who's first? Look who's entered the chat. It's EC. One of our favorite people has entered the chat. EC is first today. Good to see you. Thank you so much. She says, is this a short video or a live? This is actually a live. We're going to go for about an hour and a half, guys. Jump into this. I will speed it up so we can skip the fluff, but I just wanted to show you this because it is a little bit buried in our news feeds today. So we will be covering this one. Hey, Anthony, good to see you. He says, I'm watching now and she has a memory on her. Ooh, what does Ashley have to say? TH is here. He says, let's go. JRT says, good afternoon, AV. John says you're running late. Not too much. Usually, I won't go past 10 minutes. But again, there are sound checks, there are lighting checks, all of those things. We're getting better on time than we have been in the past. But John, you'd love this because we are hiring more people on the production team. So it's going to get faster to production. So thank you so much for being here. Victoria says she's worth waiting for. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Then John comes back and says, let's go. Amazing Disgrace says, I need AV so I can forget this big fanny face looking at me. Yeah. I think we are almost done. There's just a few things following this election, a few T's we need to cross, a few I's that we need to dot for the record in the court of public opinion. We're going to tie this off and continue on with what comes next. Josh says, let's all be patient. I am. Foster's here. Good to see you, Foster. Victoria is here as well. Yes, Foster, you were correct. That is correct. Lip gloss. I play. It's I'm a girl. Like you guys have it so easy. You can just cut your hair, put on some face moisturizer, and put on a camera and go. I can't do that. There are things, even down to shoulders. You guys like the shoulders, so I've been taking that feedback and using it, and doing more red, white, and blue. Notice the nails and. I'm sticking to our colors. Like even those small details, women are like, we do that. We do that sometimes. Hi, Carol. She says, looking forward to see what this brave woman has to say. I love it. Okay, guys, I'm just going to, hi, Nurse Janice from the UK. Nurse Janice, what time is it? You're 6 hours ahead. It's 10 p.m. Not a late night for you tonight, I hope. Don't go too late tonight. Come on, Nurse Janice. Sending you love right back. Chris Kringle has entered the chat. Good to see you, Chris Kringle. One of our favorite people has entered the chat. He says, time to spank that fanny. Time to spank it. Let's do it. Let's go. Wow. I haven't seen you in a long time. Real quick, guys, we're going to go to a first super real quick. We're going to see Mike in Tennessee with $100. He says love for the game. Guys, before we jump into this Senate committee thing, it can be boring, but I make it fun for all of you. And Mike in Tennessee is supporting that effort. He just dropped me $100 super. If you guys can do me a huge favor and type in Mike in 10 in the chat, that would mean a lot to me. He's been supporting both me and the lead attorney and a few other folks in this space covering this story. I think it's been about 2 months now, and he doesn't have to do that. This is extremely generous. Shareholder on this channel, one of the pillars of this channel. So if you guys can do me a huge favor and type Mike and 10 in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and already dub him as a stream sponsor before we go into this. It's really important information, guys. As we are going into this election year, we see what's happening in Fulton County. I still am sitting in Fulton County right now, and I'll be honest, I didn't vote yesterday. And I didn't vote yesterday because the other challengers weren't on the ballot. That's why I didn't vote yesterday. Now, I could have supported the challenger that Fani had, but at the same time, I'm literally going back to Boston in about a week. So I can bring my moderate views back up there. That's fine. I can bring my centrist views up there. Sometimes they can be a little right. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes it can be a little right, but it is really dependent on what's right. Living here in the past year and seeing what's gone down and seeing that people are very, very uninformed when it comes to who is on the ballot, who they're voting for. They just see a last name, they see a familiar name, and they feel comfortable with that. You know, as because I'm not a law student anymore. I'm getting ready to go to bar exam boot camp in 2 weeks, and that's why I'm going back up home. But to be a little bit more politically informed has helped shape my decision if I were to stay here in Fulton County and make a choice. There was an overwhelming amount of residents that came out. I think Fani came out at like 89% in Fulton County against her challenger. But at the same time, this is a person that did not show up to debate against her challenger. This is a person that has a lot of flaws politically and on the public relations side. Yet 89% of people that came out to vote, and I really don't believe that the turnout was as high as we think it is. The people that came out to vote, for some reason, still voted for Fani. Now, we have to think about the church speeches. Does that make a difference? Boots and Team and others that have been super involved in this case have talked about that from a jury tainting perspective. But you also have to consider, what does the voter turnout look like with something like this? Scott McAfee also is in office and staying. He had beat his Democratic challenger. We're actually doing an explainer video for you guys on this because everybody's like, oh, is it over? No, she had a celebration party. Who was not in the chat, who was in the crowd? Nathan Wade. Jocelyn, literally last week is like, hey, I need to get these medical procedures done. You agreed to it. Last week, I thought it was bad that divorce document came out. In addition to that, at this celebration party, who was in the first row? Nathan. Affairs are American as apple pie. Then he showed up on MSNBC last night. We're cooking up a video for you guys on that one. I don't have time to talk about it tonight. I mean, if you guys haven't put Mike and Tan in the chat, please do it for me right now, because this is the debauchery that he is sponsoring. But it's also just for us to have a place to commune, talk about this stuff, and really look at the political landscape in 2024. There's a lot going on, but let's not even waste time. I wanted to start with the super, but Mike in Tennessee, thank you. You already know, huge supporter of mine. And there are other super chats that I'm going to go in for and celebrate in a few moments, but I'm not going to wait for it. I think we should just go and see what Ashley has to say and not waste a lot of time here, because this has, we got word of it earlier today, but it's such an important discussion, especially 2 days, 48 hours after after Fani has been celebrating this win, and we're seeing Nathan emerge in the media again. All right, he has been super quiet, but we saw him come out with the ABC interview. Now he's on MSNBC. They have their celebration party this week. Fani, for the first time, had made an appearance on MSNBC as well. So they both did. Both of them did. Both Nathan and Fani came out on MSNBC this week. Huh, how interesting. Maybe they're using the same PR company. But let's go back. Let's look at the hearing. Ashley is here in Fulton County, Georgia today, and she is appearing for this one. And I'm confident that if she will appear for this one, she will probably appear for Jim Jordan and team for Congress in DC if she was called in to do that. So I'm going to take it off mute and let's go right in and see what is happening here in Fulton County today. It's a little quiet. Let me go to see that we have sound. When do they start this thing?
You have your counsel day from.
It looks like they're starting right about here on this timestamp.
Things on the agenda today.
All right, let's go.
The first was to approve our last minutes. We will need a quorum to do that, but we do not need a quorum to take testimony, so we'll go ahead and proceed here today. So I will officially call the Senate Special Committee on Investigations to order and welcome everybody here today. We have testimony today from Miss Amanda Timpson. She was a former director of the Juvenile Diversion Program with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. She has voluntarily come forward during the legislative session and presented information to me about the running of the DA's office and some misappropriation of federal grant funds. I subsequently asked her to give me some documentation to give me some proof of that. Come on in, Senator Estevez, sit wherever you would like to. And Senator Butler, you may sit at any place you want to. These are not assigned seats. If you have another place you'd prefer to sit, that's fine. Okay. So I've looked at some of the materials. She has a notebook full of information here today.
Oh!
Have not copied that. We have not put that into the.
Oh, Ashley, what do you have for us?
We'll find out what you have that is not privileged or confidential and that is relevant as we proceed. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to swear you in. You have your counsel with you, Mr. Mario Williams. Is that right? And you may have things you would like to.
And guys, this is not me. This is the Fox feed. It is a little bit low, so I will try to keep my volume as low as possible so we can hear the senator and what's happening. But this is the feed that is coming from the Senate committee office, and it seems like their audio is not the best. So I just want to let you know that's not me, but let's continue.
Add as well, and if so, I can swear you in at this time as well. Okay. And we'll do that. If you'll raise your right hands, please. You swear the testimony you will give before this committee today will
Did I not say Amanda, Michael?
Nothing but the
I'm
truth,
sorry,
so help
guys.
you God.
Yes, I do.
All right. Madam Court Reporter, we're going to start with Miss Amanda Timpson, and Mario Williams is her counsel that's with her. Ms. Timpson, would you please just introduce yourself to the jury? You don't have to give us your specific residence address, but tell us where you live and who you're working for at the present time.
Sure. My name is Amanda Timpson. I am a resident of Fulton County, and currently I work for the Momentum Advisory Collective, a national nonprofit working with justice-involved youth.
Did you previously work for the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
I did.
And what years did you work with the DA's office?
I worked with the DA's office from 2018 to 2022.
Would you give us just a little bit of background on your educational history, your educational background?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from Georgia State. I have a master's degree in human behavior from Capella University, a postmaster specialist in community intervention, and several other certifications in ongoing education.
What was your employment history just generally before you became employed by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
So I've worked in juvenile diversion and with gang prevention for about 15 years, and it started in Los Angeles, in Compton, and I worked and volunteered
Compton, wow.
in spaces and nonprofits, from youth diversion to gang prevention to mental health services. When I relocated here to Atlanta, I taught at both APS and DeKalb County School District for about 4 years combined. And then in 2018, I came on at the District Attorney's Office under Paul Howard as the Director of Gang Prevention and Intervention.
When did you move back to the Atlanta area or relocate here to the Atlanta area?
I've been here for about 9 years.
And
About 10 years, excuse
when
me.
you worked for DeKalb County Schools and Atlanta Public Schools, what was your role there? Were you a teacher or a counselor, or give us a little idea?
I was a middle school social studies teacher.
And so what led you to apply for employment with the district attorney's office?
Prior to relocating here in Atlanta, my background was gang prevention, and so when I came here, I didn't really see too much of that. It's a passion. It's something that I got into due to experiences in my own life, and I just felt like I understood gang issues from a unique standpoint, and I wanted to be a part of the solution.
It was, tell us a little bit about your position there. I don't know that I could repeat what you just said with the, did you say you were the director of gang prevention
And intervention.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that was under District Attorney Paul Howard.
Correct.
Was that a position that was funded by a grant or something he created, or it would have been an opening? Tell us how that became
So
a
he created.
possibility.
Yes, sir. Sorry. So he created the office of the gang coordinator, and under that office was the unit for gang prevention and intervention. He saw an uptick in criminal street gang activity, specifically in youth, and wanted to work to divert some general funds and apply for grant funds to eradicate gang activity in Atlanta.
Were you the first director of gang prevention and intervention?
I was.
Okay, so that was a newly created position that you applied for?
Yes.
And Paul Howard was the DA here for what, 18 or 20 years, I guess, before Miss Willis?
Correct.
Is that who you reported to, or did you have another supervisor?
He was my direct supervisor.
Tell me what you did in that role.
In that role, I created diversionary programs. I worked with Atlanta Public Schools to educate their school resource officers on gang trends that we were seeing in our office. I also was tasked with creating a steering committee of Fulton County residents and leaders to try to kind of steer the direction of the gang prevention. I was also tasked with creating opportunities for gang prevention, and one of those opportunities was we were gifted a building at 475 Fairburn Road, and we were going to rehab that building and turn it into the Gang Prevention Center for youth empowerment. And so I managed all functions of that center, including creating programming and working with.
And let me interrupt for one moment, guys. If you're just now coming in, we're watching Amanda Timpson testify in front of the Georgia State Special Committee into the matter of Fani Willis right now. We know that she is feverishly celebrating a win this week. I really don't think that it is a significant win. That's going to sound bad because when you win a Democratic primary, it's really just against the people on your party side. What Amanda is telling us right now, Amanda is giving us her background. And I wanted to interrupt for just a moment, just to let you know that Amanda was actually hired in the prior regime. She was hired under Paul Howard. We have heard that there have been issues under the Paul Howard regime as a district attorney. We have also had Fani Willis on record saying that she would not sleep with her employees. I say it again. She said she would not sleep with her employees like Paul Howard had. Now, direct contradiction. Going back to Amanda, I wanted to set that precedent as knowing that Fani Willis did not hire Amanda. So as we get deeper into Amanda's story and we start to parse it out and we start to see that Amanda was not a direct hire of Fani, when we get to the part where Amanda talks about how she was discharged from this district attorney's office after speaking out about how funds in the past have not been used in a certain way, this will spark a memory there. So I just wanted to interrupt to make sure that we all knew that Fani's team did not hire Amanda directly. Amanda was a hire from the previous regime. Let's go back in.
Partners in the community as well as the rehabilitation, so working with engineers, contractors, etc.
So you helped develop that center, get it retrofitted or refurbished or whatever for those purposes.
Yes, sir.
So that was a gift. Some citizen donated that for that purpose, or?
It was actually donated by the county. I'm not sure exactly that process. It happened prior to me coming on board, I believe in 2017. The county gifted it to the DA's office, and the DA's office sought to create a gang prevention center.
So that may have been one of the motivating factors for creating your position once you had a facility there for youth gang prevention and intervention or whatnot at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me about the funding. You mentioned that there were some general funds from Fulton County, and then there were federal grants that helped fund your position in this program.
So my position was funded fully by the DA's office. And there were general funds allocated to rehab the building. The grant funds were allocated specifically to fund programming out of this building. So when we applied for the grant, we applied for it with the thought in mind that we already had this building and that we already had funds to rehab this building. So we got it contingent upon the building being there.
And what, give me an idea of the amount of the grants or where they come from. Federal government, some department, what's the?
Yes, there was one specific grant that was specific to the building, and that was the the 2020 OJJDP Gang Prevention Grant. And so that was given to us in October of 2020, and the amount was $488,564, I believe.
All right, so tell me what that stands for. OJJDP.
The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention.
So was that something that you had a part in applying for that grant?
Yes, I helped co-write the grant. Myself, my colleague, and our grant writer all contributed to co-writing that grant in early 2020, I believe.
Okay. See, this is why it is very important for us, and a brief interruption again. The reason why it's important to hear Amanda's story about this is because that grant came from the Department of Justice. And this is what Jim Jordan and now, not just the, Congress in itself, not just the House of Representatives, it's also the Senate. You have both parts of our United States Congress looking into this matter. Okay. That news apparently has been buried this week because of the Democratic Party or the Democratic primary that's been happening here in Fulton County this week. This is why it's very important to still have platforms like this and communities like this for us to see beyond what some parts of the news want to show us, but really understand what is also happening at the same time. You know, the 29th is a few days from now. Jim Jordan also sent a letter to Nathan. That's why I found it a little strange that Nathan has been on news outlets when you need to be getting ready to speak to Congress. You don't have the protection of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office anymore. Going back to Amanda, Amanda just mentioned to us in this testimony that she had signed the grants. She was responsible for petitioning for the grants from the Department of Justice back in 2020 before Fani Willis stepped into office. And she has intricate knowledge of these grants and what went into them. So let's keep that in mind as she continues on here. But I wanted to start with showing you, like, she's not, when she was whistleblowing, it wasn't just speaking up because she doesn't have history with this. She had prior history due to these new people coming into office and trying to make change. Let's go back.
So you submit that to the Office of Juvenile Justice at the federal level.
Yes, sir.
I guess other DA offices around the country also can apply for these type of grants.
Yes, they're very competitive.
And you won. You got the,
Yeah.
it was granted to you.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that amount was $488,564.
Yes.
What were the funds to be used for? Do you have to specify that when you apply for a grant, how much money you need and what you're going to spend it on?
Yes. And I think one of the reasons that we were awarded the grant was because our grant was so specific. So the grant consisted of us narrating basically the gang issue in Fulton County. So we broke it down by zip codes, by active gangs in those specific zip codes, by correlating schools that those gangs fed into, and then the age range was 12 to 17. So ultimately, the grant funds were supposed to be allocated for the programming that fit that age range, that population. And so the programming would consist of sub-awardees, which are other organizations that are doing the work in the community. We don't necessarily do all of the work. A lot of times we manage the work. And so, but all of that was supposed to be done out of the gang center, if that makes sense.
That does. So you, as the coordinator, would have other private organizations that are charitable organizations wanting to intervene with troubled youth to prevent gang violence?
Yes,
Okay.
and in this situation, it was all nonprofits and excluding Fulton County schools and Atlanta Public Schools.
Were they engaged or involved as well?
Yes,
But you didn't have to pay them for
we
their
did.
services?
We did.
Some of these nonprofits you would provide funding to funneled through this grant?
Correct.
Okay. What are the rules around federal grants? You sound pretty savvy about that. Are there specific reporting requirements or spending limitations? What happens once you obtain the grant?
So once you obtain the grant, you have to provide a clear budget. And once you do that, they'll release the funds. Once you release the funds, you have to basically show your work. So that is manifested in a quarterly report. So you manage your sub recipients, and then every 4 months you send in a quarterly report that basically illustrates what you've done with the money and ensures that there is that you're following the grant.
Right. And so that initial budget, do you have to lay it out to the federal agency how you intend to spend the money?
Correct.
They get to approve or reject that, or is that part of the application process?
A little bit of both. In the application, you outline what your intentions are, but you have a certain amount of time to go back and say, once you've gotten the award, say something doesn't work out, say a nonprofit closes their doors and they no longer can be your partner, then obviously you can find somebody else that does comparable work, and then they could fill that spot. But there's not a lot of leeway because they obviously give you the money for specific things. So unless you can ensure that you are still doing those specific things, then that's the only way that you can get an exception.
Was any portion of this grant intended for salaries or compensation for employees of the district attorney's office?
There was part of the grant was to, I believe, the community resource officer. On the grant, I believe 50% of their salary was paid by this grant. And so that was the only portion. Their salary and their fringe benefits were paid.
Ooh, what did we just? Oh, this is why these hearings just yield so much good information. Shout out to the Lost in Translation podcast for being in the chat. Listen, guys, what did Amanda just tell us? Remember the last hearing that I streamed for you guys here in Fulton County, just a mile or two away from where I'm sitting right now? The last hearing that this body, this Georgia Senate committee had, was with finance professionals that were charged with the oversight, or if that is a thing, the oversight for when Fani Willis would pay individuals in her office. She would have to go to this committee and ask them for funding from the government, so she would be able to then take that funding for the salaries of the individuals that were working in their office. What we just heard Ashley say, and Ashley was in charge of the grants. You know, she talked about her educational background and how she worked in the communities, things of the like. So Ashley's job prior to Fani being in office in 2021, Ashley's job was as a grant writer. She would find these grants, and through the Department of Justice, she would petition for these grants, and it was her responsibility and her job to make sure that the oversight was also done when the Fulton County District Attorney's Office received the money. She mentioned that there was quarterly reporting that was done, and they would have to report on how they're spending that money. The bombshells she just dropped, if you listen closely, and I'll bring her back on and give us 10 seconds of a rewind so you all can hear it. She mentioned that a part of that grant, the other reason why they were petitioning for that job is there was a petitioning for the money is because there was a job that they were trying to pay for as well. So this shows me, just from a legal standpoint and from a PR standpoint, there's so much that's buried in the news. A lot of the truth is not coming out, but we can see it come out right now. They were getting this money to pay people for salaries. Now, if you're getting millions from another source, right? If the DOJ is giving you money for community grants, for community purposes, maybe we can arguably say that paying a community grant writer for a job within that petition may make sense. But now we're starting to see everyone's like, no corruption over here. We're not doing anything shady. But I'm telling you guys right now, a bipartisan Congress on the Senate side and the House of Representatives is looking into this, and they want to talk to Ashley, and we're getting a preview right now. Let's continue, and I will take 10 seconds back and give that back to you guys because Ashley just said something that was extremely important in this story. So let's go back about 10 seconds, and I'll let you guys hear that again.
So you submit that to the Office of Juvenile Justice at the federal level.
Yes, sir.
I guess other DA offices around the country also can apply for these type of grants.
Yes, they're very competitive.
And you won. You got it was granted to you.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that amount was $488,564.
Yes.
What were the funds to be used for? Do you have to specify that when you apply for a grant, how much money you need and what you're going to spend it on?
Yes. And I think one of the reasons that we were awarded the grant was because our grant was so specific. So the grant consisted of us narrating basically the gang issue in Fulton County. So we broke it down by zip codes, by active gangs in those specific zip codes, by correlating schools that those gangs fed into, and then the age range was 12 to 17. So ultimately, the grant funds were supposed to be allocated for the programming that fit that age range, that population. And so the programming would consist of subawardees, which are other organizations that are doing the work in the community. We don't necessarily do all of the work. A lot of times we manage the work. And so, but all of that was supposed to be done out of the gang center, if that makes sense.
That does. So you, as the coordinator, would have other private organizations that are charitable organizations wanting to intervene with troubled youth to prevent gang violence?
Yes,
Okay.
and in this situation, it was all nonprofits and excluding Fulton County Schools and Atlanta Public Schools.
Were they engaged or involved as well?
Yes,
But you didn't have to pay them for
we
their
did.
services? Right.
We did.
Some of these nonprofits you would provide funding to funneled through this grant?
Correct.
Okay. Uh, What are the rules around federal grants? You sound pretty savvy about that. Are there specific reporting requirements or spending limitations? What happens once you obtain the grant?
So once you obtain the grant, you have to provide a clear budget. And once you do that, they'll release the funds. Once you release the funds, you have to basically show your work. So that is is manifested in a quarterly report. So you manage your sub recipients, and then every 4 months you send in a quarterly report that basically illustrates what you've done with the money and ensures that there is that you're following the grant.
Right. And so that initial budget, do you have to lay it out to the federal agency how you intend to spend the money?
Correct.
They get to approve or reject that, or is that part of the application process?
A little bit of both. In the application, you outline what your intentions are, but you have a certain amount of time to go back and say, once you've gotten the award, say something doesn't work out, say a nonprofit closes their doors and they no longer can be your partner, then obviously you can find somebody else that does comparable work, and then they could fill that spot. But there's not a lot of leeway because they obviously give you the money for specific things. So unless you can ensure that you are still doing those specific things, then that's the only way that you can get an exception.
Was any portion of this grant intended for salaries or compensation for
Here it is,
employees of
guys.
the district attorney's office?
There was part of the grant was to, um, I believe, the community resource officer. On the grant, I believe 50% of their salary was paid by this grant.
Wow,
And
50%.
so that was the only portion. Their salary and their fringe benefits were paid by this grant.
Was any of your salary paid for by this grant?
No, because I was a district attorney's full-time employee.
All right. When was that application submitted? You don't have to give me the precise date, but just the general time frame.
COVID messed up my dates, but I believe it was either the very end of 2019 or that first part of 2020.
And when was it granted, or when did you learn you had obtained that grant?
The last week in October of 2020.
And so Fani Willis would have been elected in the first week of November of 2020.
Yes, she was elected a week after.
When was the budget submitted that you mentioned, or the spending plan that allowed the release of the funding?
I believe that was in late January, obviously with the change in administration and it was still COVID. They understood and gave us some time, and I believe it was in late January.
The full amount was awarded, the 488?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as you are doing your role, are there other grants that you applied for as well?
There was no other grants that I specifically applied for. There was other grants that I helped manage. And if you want me to go into that, I can.
Yeah, we learned an awful lot our last meeting about the Fulton County DA's office budget. They get some state funds, they get, their allocation or I don't know what you call it, their, their funding from the county itself, and then they get all these federal programs or federal grants as well. I'm trying to flesh out the federal part now because the county knows, I think they gave them 36 million.
Mhm.
What?
And they mentioned a big 75 million amount of basically COVID funds that it wasn't all spent to the DA's office, but for the justice system. But I don't know that anybody really knows what the total budget is at the DA's office or how much of that is funded through federal grants. So I'm trying to get you to educate me a little bit. You knew specifically about this OJJDP grant
Yes,
because you
sir.
helped write it.
Yes.
But there are other ones that you would have helped manage or administer.
Yes. So the other one specifically that I helped manage was the JAG grant. So it's a Justice Assistance Grant. It's also a federal grant, but it's allocated to the state and then ultimately delegated to the counties, and then the county commissioners allot it how they see fit. For the DA's office, it was to fund the junior DA program.
All right, let me slow you down 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
I'm absorbing this information a little bit slower. You know it like the back of your hand.
Right.
That is a social justice assistance grant,
Yes, it's a justice assistance.
and that's why you call it a JAG for the Justice Assistance Grant.
Yes, sir.
And
Hey guys, and here's the thing, a slight interruption. Shout out to Nick Starro, another law tuber that's in the building doing his thing. He's been covering the Young Thug trial. He says that the 11 Alive feed cuts out before the end of the hearing. I'm actually using Fox 5 Atlanta right now. So we have the best feed as possible. I know that the sound isn't best quality, guys, but I just wanted to give you that. And shout out to Nick for popping in. If any of the mods can drop the link to his channel. If you're interested in the Young Thug case, the Fani Willis office is prosecuting that. I've been seeing this brother like from another country. He's been covering it for the last year. So if there's anyone that knows more about that trial, it's Nick. So check him out if you haven't already. And thank you so much for the reminder, Nick. Let's go back in.
that is distributed among various DA's offices in the state.
Yes,
Do you have to apply to the state to get that, or is that coming directly from the feds?
it's coming directly from the feds.
Do you know if other DA's offices around the state of Georgia receive grant funds from that JAG grant?
I believe so. I just know it's the Edward Bryan Justice Assistance Grants. And to my knowledge, I believe that some, if not all, can get it. But I think it's based on need.
And do you know the amount of that grant, the JAG grant for this? Apparently you used it for the junior DA program.
Yes, correct. I don't know the explicit amount, and we have been trying to get that information for quite some time. I just know that it funded the junior DA program, which I believe yearly spent about $20,000. So it was a small grant for the DA's office.
Tell me about the junior DA program.
Yes, sir. It's a crime prevention program specific to youth, middle school and ninth grade, so 6th, 7th, 8th, and ninth grade. And it's essentially to bridge the gap between community and law enforcement, and basically show youth, what the functions of the of different forms of law
Thanks,
enforcement,
Doctor.
everything from, we go to the Atlanta Police Training Center, the Horse Mount Center, we go to the state capitol, we go to speak with judges and, just different officers. I think sometimes they even get to work with the SWAT officers. And overall, it's just to, again, create camaraderie between youth and law enforcement.
Thanks, Big Bob.
And just show them overall functions of that process.
How many kids involved in that program every year?
Well, under Mr. Howard, it was in excess of 80 to 120. The 1 year that I did it under Miss Willis, there was only 40 youth. So, and that was
Ooh.
also during 2021. So I know COVID probably had partial, fault in that as well.
Hold on, Amanda. Go back
Is
on
that a
that.
year long?
Partial. That was also during 2020, only 80 to 100 of them overall functions of that process.
How many kids involved in that program every year?
Well, under Mr. Howard, it was in excess of 80 to 120. The 1 year that I did it under Miss Willis, there was only 40 youth. So, and that was also during 2021. So I know COVID probably had partial, fault in that as well.
So Amanda's talking about the JAG program, guys. I did have to rewind myself, and we do need to be cognizant of the fact that some of this funding that they did get was designed, and that's why the Justice Department is looking into this so hard. The money was designed to be able to give back to the communities in which they serve and to develop youth programs. It sounds like under Paul Howard, which was Fannie's predecessor, Amanda just told us that 80 to 100 kids were involved in that program. And under Fannie's regime, there were only 40 kids involved in that program. We'll give her the benefit of COVID and people not being able to come out. But at the same time, it was 2021, right? So we'll see what happened to this money, but we have a lot of money that we're tracking here. Amanda's telling us about 2 grants in particular right now that have been on the record. She is talking about a grant that is 488,000. The JAG, the Justice Assistance Grant, we don't have a number on that. She actually just said that too. But at the same time, the senator that is running this discussion has mentioned that the Fulton County in the last meeting mentioned that they received about 36 million that went to Fani Willis's office, and that altogether they also received 75 million. So this conversation is really designed to follow the money and see what's going on and see where we can see where it went. I mean, I know a lot of it went to Nathan. Some, like, we all know that, but we're trying to see where the rest of this money trail leads us.
Is that a year-long program?
So it's a summer program, and it's run for 3 weeks throughout the summer, and they come with us every day. I believe that year they were with us every day but Friday.
So it's almost like a summer camp type program, but you don't spend the night.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you educate these middle school children as to the justice system, both from how the DA's office operates, law enforcement operates, and various aspects of the community.
Absolutely. And it's really geared towards at-risk or low-income populations as well, because a lot of times they can't also, summer programs cost a lot of money. So
Okay.
this is a free option as well.
So it's free for the kids that participate in it?
Yes, sir.
And
That's right,
what the
Candy.
grant is to fund the operating cost of that free program.
Yes, sir.
Are there any parameters around how you spend that money or who's allowed to participate in the program?
Well, the program is specific for Fulton County youth, and you must be attending Fulton County schools or Atlanta Public Schools. And then again, you have to be in 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th grade.
And that program was already in existence during Paul Howard's tenure as district attorney.
Yes, I believe in 2019 he celebrated his 20th year doing it, so he did it for quite a long
So
time.
that's a long-standing Atlanta Fulton DA office program.
Yes, sir.
It was in place long before Fani Willis was elected.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Sir.
So she inherited it, so to speak.
Yes.
And did she take over the program after that, or did she designate a specific individual in the DA's office to monitor or manage that?
Yes. Michael Cuffey, he was the chief programs officer.
Oh, let's learn about Michael. Michael has all types of shenanigans tied to him.
And he oversaw all programs. So he was my direct supervisor at the time, and he was the direct supervisor over myself and the junior DA program as well.
Was Mr. Cuffey with the DA's office during Paul Howard's tenure?
No.
Okay, so he was a new employee, came
Yes,
in
sir.
with Miss Willis.
Ooh,
Who did you
that's
report
an
to
important detail.
as the Director of Gang Prevention and Intervention?
I reported directly to Mr. Howard.
Okay. Did your role change after he was defeated by Miss Willis?
Yes. Um, so the week after she was elected, she sent an email to the DA's office, all current employees of the DA's office, along with her new organizational chart, and basically told us that a lot of changes were coming, and one of those changes would be employees. And so while we were all guaranteed an opportunity to apply and interview, she would guarantee us an interview. We weren't guaranteed a job. And
Wow.
so once upon reviewing the organizational chart, I realized the gang prevention unit had been abolished. So my job was
Oh, okay. That's a bombshell. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone through this. What? Love you, Candy. But what did Amanda just tell us? Fani was elected in 2021. There was a prior regime. This happens all the time in corporations. It happens all the time in apparently political situations where there's a new office. So, what she just told us is that Amanda had been in this job, this gang prevention program job that Paul Howard had done for 20 years. It was a long-standing program that they had. She would write grants, she would work with the government to get that money, but also not only receive the money, she would also report on the money. She had been doing her job for some time. Paul Howard had this program in place for 20 years. Fani Willis steps into office, and what happens here is she lets the entire office know once she's elected and in office in January 2021, hey, existing people that used to work here, I'm letting you know we're going to have some changes. Here's our new org chart. And that means that some of you will have jobs and some of you may not. If you are in the position where you do not, the thing that comes along with it is you're going to have to apply for the job. We're going to give everyone the opportunity to apply for the job, but it doesn't guarantee that you will have it. Amanda's about to tell us that her role changed. She was not in the same job that she had applied for and was in when she was with Paul Howard. Amanda's job changed, and she started reporting to Michael Cuffey, the individual that spent that money, which we're about to learn, in inappropriate ways. He is a new hire and came on in the Fani regime in 2021. That's really important to note. But Ashley also, I said Ashley, Amanda, I keep doing that. I apologize, guys, for the mistake. I think Ashley Merchant in my mind. That's why I keep getting the A's mixed up. So I apologize if I keep saying that. Amanda just told us that her role changed specifically because Fani got rid of that function on the team. So let's keep going because this is actually getting pretty good. It's getting really good. So let's see what Amanda has to say here. The A's.
not the opportunity to apply and interview. She would guarantee us an interview. We weren't guaranteed a job. And so once upon reviewing the organizational chart, I realized the gang prevention unit had been abolished. So my job was not there for me, even if I wanted it. And so I found 3 other positions and applied for those positions. And on November 20th of 2020, I interviewed in front of a 9 member panel led by Miss Willis and Nathan Wade and Jeff DeSantis
And
and 6
Nathan.
other individuals. And ultimately, on December 9th of 2021, I received my invitation to the administration along with a congratulations letter.
On January 9th of 21,
December 9th, I'm sorry,
December 9th,
of 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yes.
So she didn't officially take office until, I would assume, January, right?
Yes.
Okay. But she went ahead and was having the transition, hiring new people. All right.
Yes.
So Mr. Wade was on this committee that interviewed you?
Yes.
Was he
Wow.
employed by the DA's office at that time, to your knowledge?
I don't know because I didn't know him. I just knew that he was, I would see him around the office, but also I just knew that he was one of the main ones leading the interview, and so I just took notice between
Side
Miss
turn.
Willis, Jeff DeSantis, and Nathan Wade because they were the main ones leading the interview.
And who is Jeff DeSantis?
I believe he is her media personnel, but I know he's an attorney, but I don't know his exact title in her office.
Had he previously been employed by the district attorney's office?
No, he had not.
So he was a new player in the game.
Yes,
So your interview must have gone well,
it did.
and you were awarded the job.
I was.
What was the new job? You said there were 2 or 3 different positions you looked at in the new administration.
Yes. So my new position was the director of juvenile diversion.
So still working with troubled youth.
Yes.
Was that just a renamed department as the reorganization, new organizational chart went, or was it very similar in duties or something totally different?
It was a little bit of both. Similar because I worked with the same population, different in that it wasn't specific to gang related or gang involvement, and also different because the focus of gang reduction kind of shifted, and it was a lot more just open, I would say, like as far as just any youth who were justice involved. So I would work a lot with juvenile court.
Okay. So not just specific to juvenile gangs, any juvenile problems or issues.
Correct.
Now, same salary in the new position or
Yes.
had, okay. Was there any unit that dealt specifically with youth gangs under this reorganization, or it kind of came under your umbrella as the director of juvenile diversion programs?
Yes, there was, so it came under my purview, so there was no more gang-specific unit, other than the prosecution unit, the gang unit of attorneys I am program, so there was no programs.
Marie, that is correct.
We are kind of learning as we go how massive the DA's office is. Do you know how many employees totally in the Fulton DA's office?
I don't,
You know
hundreds.
do you know how many attorneys, assistant district attorneys?
If I even spoke on it, I wouldn't be accurate because I haven't been there in 2 years. However, I know there's hundreds.
All right.
At least
And it sounds
150,
like
I would think.
hundreds of support staff or other administrative personnel such as yourself as well.
Absolutely.
So this is in this new positions when you began reporting to Michael Cuffey.
Yes.
Did you continue to supervise the OJJDP grant
Yes.
in your new position?
Yes. I was actually written into the grant as the grant project director. So no matter what I did, if that grant was valid, I would be supervising the grant.
But you weren't paid through the grant?
No.
Right. And did you continue running the junior DA program?
Yes, for a short time.
All right. All right. Well, as 2021 begins, you're in your new role that has the same duties and more, and you're now reporting to Michael Cuffey instead of Paul Howard.
Correct.
Did you notice any irregularities or problems with the administration of this OJJDP grant?
Yes. In early March of 2021, after a lot of the administrative work was done on the grant, we need to now get to work. And so Michael Cuffey, who is the new chief programs officer, invited myself and my colleague, who also co-wrote the grant, into a meeting just so he could understand the scope of the grant. In this meeting, this was the first time that he kind of mentioned that what he wanted to spend the grant on, and he articulated that he wanted to spend the grant on computers,
Here it is.
travel,
Here it
and
is.
swag. And at the time, we were saying swag because there was
Here
a
it
lot of
is.
rebranding going on. And so like each unit now had their own sweaters and their own mugs and stuff. And there was a complete and total rehaul of the building and stuff. So this idea of having swag was was like a big thing. So those are the
These
three
trinkets.
things.
These are pins and
Yeah.
coffee cups and T-shirts and
Exactly.
sweatshirts, things
Exactly.
promoting the new district attorney.
Correct.
I
And
love this senator. I really do. Guys, this is the moment. This is what Ashley, Amanda, sorry, I keep doing it. This is what Amanda was whistleblowing on, is this moment right here. Because if you think about it, if Amanda and the other person that she worked with in the prior regime, if they are signing their name on the grant and they are responsible for supervising the grant, they're taking the grant over the goal line, right? Even after the regime changes. So when Fani takes it from Paul Howard, as you can see, Nathan Wade was on the hiring committee. Ashley got a new job. Her department was abolished in a sense. And then they didn't even pay her more. She got into this new job and she went over as, as a lateral move. She didn't get paid anything extra. Her duties kind of changed because she mentioned that instead of focusing on gangs, her works really started focusing on juvenile court. When she reported to Michael Cuffey, this is where we start to have a problem. Fani and team took over in January. This woman, Amanda, has been reporting to Michael Cuffey at this point for 3 months. And the first time that they talk about this grant, instead of day one, because you get it, you start a new job, you take a few weeks to get things done. But if this program landed under him, and if Amanda reported to him, they should have had this conversation within the first 3 weeks in a one-on-one with your manager. This is what I'm responsible for. Here's the responsibilities I'm going to have. By the way, we have this grant. Here's how the grant works. Here is the rules that are centered on the grant. Here's how we can spend the funds. Michael meets with Amanda in March of that year. 3 months later, so obviously it wasn't a huge priority. They meet, and Ashley is hearing him saying how he wants to distribute the money for the grant. I love this senator because what did he just ask Ashley? He's just like, hold on. He asked her, he's just like, what was the money spent on? It was spent on swag. People in the chat, if you lived in Fulton County or whatever county, let's picture your county, wherever you live, whatever state you live in. If you got a district attorney, a new district attorney in your area, and they went and got sweaters, mugs, things, trinkets to represent them, buttons, would you, number one, would you buy it? And number two, do you think it matters? If you think you would buy it and it matters, type 1 in the chat. If you think things like that don't matter compared to the larger social issues that office should be focused on, put a 2 in the chat. I want to get an understanding of how you guys feel across the country. And even some of you guys are watching internationally. There's so many of you guys watching internationally as well. Is that a good use of money? Computers, I somehow get, but you have other budgets to pull from for that. For something like this from the Department of Justice that's very specific, do you even want to play with that? And we can see, number one, Michael Cuffey came in 2 months too late, but he came in already with a plan. So let's go back in. I'm seeing a lot of 2s. It's PR. But where does that money come from? Annette's checking in from the Barbados. I seen someone else from Germany a little while ago, but it's not a priority. The kids that were in this program when Paul Howard was in charge was ranging from 80 to 100 to actually make a difference. And then when Fani was in charge, 40 of them and involved in the program. But let's keep going.
And so I quickly kind of interjected and let him know that those were not things that we could do with the grant. At that point, it seemed as if he hadn't read the grant narrative. And so I just wanted to educate him. I was a bit concerned, but at that point, it was the first time I had heard of it. I just tried to kind of set him straight and tell him like, oh, we can't do that. It's really specific. And it's specific to programming. We can't buy any equipment. And that was a huge thing because in the grant narrative, in the grant budget, it says specifically no equipment.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so his idea for wanting to get computers and even pay for travel, like those are completely out of the scope of the grant.
And you know that because you wrote the grant.
Correct.
And in the grant plan, you tell how the money is going to be spent.
Correct.
And in the
Wow.
budget, you identify how it's intended to be spent.
Correct.
Did any of those documents provide for spending money on swag?
No.
Did any of those documents provide for spending money on computers or other equipment?
No, sir.
Did any of those documents or budgets provide for money to be spent for travel?
No.
And how about on the junior DA grant? I think we called that the JAG grant. Were you continuing to administer that in March of 2021?
Yes.
And did you notice or detect or hear about any intentions to improperly spend that money?
Not in March, but as time went on, yes.
So what happened when you straightened Michael Cuffey out and after he had told you his intentions of how he intended to spend the money, you told him that was illegal? What was his reaction?
Initially, he let me know that it was the employees in the DA's office call Miss Willis Madam. So he let me know that it was Madam's vision. And
Whoa. Did you guys hear that? I'm sorry. This is going to sound really bad coming from another woman. And I get when you're one of the first female district attorneys. But to have your subordinates correct people and say, no, it's not District Attorney Fani Willis. It's Madam District Attorney Fani Willis. It's Madam. You need to put the Madam in that title when you talk about her or refer to her. Her manager said that to her. Oh my God.
I basically said, okay, I understand that, but that's not what the grant says. And as the director of the grant, I wanted to make sure that I was careful and clear what the grant said. And this grant was written prior to her coming in the office. I assumed at the time that maybe they just weren't aware, but I just wanted to make him aware that that is not what the grant says.
Okay. Did you hear further conversations about the misuse of the money, or did he follow your advice and not spend it on swag and travel and equipment?
So initially, that was just the initial time. I continued to be persistent and to let him and everybody else know that we could not spend the grant in that manner. And he persisted to say that that was what we were going to do with the grant. In weekly meetings, we had weekly program team meetings. He would say that. So it was multiple people that, heard his intentions to spend this money that way. And I was just persistent in letting him know that that was not what we could do. And I noticed as I persisted to let him know that my treatment drastically started to change.
By him?
Yes, specifically from Michael Cuffey, in the form of being disinvited to meetings or being blatantly rude, or when I said, hey, we can't do that, just staring directly into my eyes and then just walking off. I'm like,
what?
And I didn't know, if this was an intimidation factor or what was going on.
Oh, guys. See, this is what happens when you change the guard. When prior regimes changed, right? Amanda had been in her job, had a different man. She actually reported directly to Paul Howard. She didn't have a manager before. There was no middle person between her and the DA. She would have her meetings with Paul Howard and talk about these grants and talk about how the funds were used. She had a direct line to the district attorney. Fani wanted to change that and took this function, got rid of it, and then put it under Michael Cuffey. After Michael Cuffey, Lord have mercy, after Michael Cuffey corrected her and say, no, it's Madam District Attorney, he also started treating Amanda differently because she's just like, hey, I wrote the grants and she's technically responsible for them. It is still her job, even though you guys took her department away. It's still her job. And she's like, she says to him, you can't spend the money in that way. You can't spend it on travel. We're not allowed to do that. You can't spend it on mugs and sorry guys, I'll say it, I'm going to swear. Sorry for the faint of heart. You can't spend it on bullshit that doesn't matter. That's not what the grant is for. And as a person that signed it, we need to be very careful with that. What Amanda is telling us right now is that Michael Cuffey started being his attitude towards her started changing. He's being a little rude, staring at her a little bit longer. Weird stuff. Because she's like, you can't spend this money. That's all she did. She actually told him the truth. You can't do that. But this is the treatment that happened. So it's starting to get a little juicy, guys. But I'm going to go back 10 seconds so we can hear Amanda say that one more time because it's super important.
Going on, do that, just staring directly into my eyes and then just disinvited to meetings or being blatantly like rude, or when I said, hey, we can't do that, just staring directly into my eyes and then just walking off. I'm like, okay. And I didn't know, if this was an intimidation factor or what was going on, but I just knew I had to stand my ground because I was, fearful of the misuse of funds.
Well, so the story ends there, or did you continue your complaints?
No, I continued my complaints. Ultimately, in May of 2021, the overwhelming retaliation and pushback got so bad. I sent an email to Miss Willis and I told her that I had followed the chain of command to no avail and I really needed to speak with her. At this time, I believed that she had no idea what was going on and I wanted to make her aware of what I saw to be a potentially illegal and dangerous situation. And I didn't want there to be any scandal related to her administration.
You sent that directly to her?
I did.
Did she reply?
She did not.
Oh!
But I believe 2 or 3 days later, Mr. Cuffey approached me and said that he knew that I reached out to her and that no matter what I did, that she was just going to come back to him. And so at that point, I didn't really know who to go to or what to do, because when I attempted to make her aware of what I saw to be a illegal situation, it was told directly to the person that was doing what I saw to be illegal.
Mr. Cuffey.
Mr. Cuffey,
Okay.
Correct.
Did you complain to anybody else other than Mr. Cuffey in your email to Fani Willis?
Not in my initial email.
Guys, I'm sorry. That was so important. I couldn't even take notes. Number one, she's getting this weird treatment from her new boss that she did not have before, or did not ask for, that Fani appointed. She sent Fani an email and said, hey, here's what's going on. I don't want any shenanigans happening with your administration. I'm letting you know as his supervisor what's happening and we need to see some change. Fani didn't respond to that email at all. That's not good. It's not good. Not only did she not respond, but like now we're hearing that. How awkward is it in a working scenario where you have a boss that is treating you badly? You go to their boss and that boss doesn't do anything. And then your boss finds out that you said like, hey, we're not getting along or whatever those things. And then he starts treating you worse. He went to Amanda and said, hey, Amanda, I know you went to Fani on me. I know you snitched on me. Just so you know, she's only going to tell me what you tell her. Now I see why Jim and team are really invested in this. This is terrible.
Things started to progress as far as my retaliation. It was almost daily that it was something. If it wasn't something, it was, something else. Eventually, the junior DA program started to near. And he started saying that he was going to be buying Apple products with the junior DA funds.
Apple products like Apple iPhones or computers?
Computers.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but he just really wanted these Apple computers. So I let him know that we couldn't do that with the junior DA funds either. And so he took me off the directing the junior DA program and put other people in my place. And then eventually, when junior DA started in June of 2021, I noticed that there were youth in the program that were not Fulton County residents, weren't even residents of the state of Georgia. There were youth in the program from Florida, from Wisconsin.
What?
And so, of course, I questioned it. I felt like, our youth in Fulton County have so much need. Why are we not focusing on the youth in our county, especially when the grant and the grant application or the application to the program specifically say that must be Fulton County residents, must attend Fulton County or Atlanta Public Schools. So when I brought that to him,
We're still talking about
Mr. Cuffey, excuse me, sorry. So when I brought that to Mr. Cuffey, the next day I was told that we needed to have a meeting, and he attempted to put me on some type of a plan, like
A performance plan, a PIP.
professional development plan. I've never been written up, never had any warnings. So I
was wondering if you have a history of being a troublemaker in the
I do not.
workplace.
I do not. And in the evidence that I gave you, I also included 24 letters of recommendation from everybody that I've worked for in the past 12 years,
Wow.
including everybody here
Wow.
in Atlanta that I've ever worked for, saying the exact opposite of what's been stated of me. However, he tried to put me on some plan, but the plan was like a personal attack on me. It talked about my appearance, and it was just not a professional. So I escalated my concerns to HR. Human resources, excuse me. So the HR personnel in the DA's office, her name is Kyra Banks. I reached out to her
Kyra Banks, not Tyra.
July 7th of 2021. And we met on July 20th. And I basically told her all of my concerns, and she said she took notes and told me that she would escalate my matter. On July 23rd,
Escalate, in your view, means take it up the ladder to
Yes.
a higher, somebody above Mr. Cuffey.
Absolutely.
Okay.
On July 23rd, there was additional retaliation, and it was just so much. I was extremely anxious, even coming to work, because I just didn't know from day to day what type of retaliation I would receive. On July 26th, I reached out to Dexter Bond, who is the chief of staff in the
Chief
DA's
of
office.
Staff to Ms. Willis.
Yes.
Okay.
And I reached out to Dexter because we worked in the previous administration together. He knew my work ethic. And I just felt like I needed somebody in the office to understand and know what was going on. And
what
so
was his role with Paul Howard?
He under Paul, I think he wasn't chief of staff. I think he was I can't remember his exact role, if I'm being honest, but he was a
Administrative
high up
position.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
he's an attorney as well.
he had worked in higher levels of administration for DA Paul Howard as well.
Yes.
before.
And I believe he worked with Paul Howard for like 7 years. So
Okay.
So
you reached out to him
yes.
directly. All right, tell us about that.
And I told him there were youth in the junior DA program from out of the area. I told him how he treated me. I told him about the PDP. I told him about the OJJDP funds, and I sent him a copy of the PDP. And I told him specifically in a text. Well, I spoke to him in person, and then I sent him a picture of this professional development plan, and I said to him specifically that at this point in time, like, he's putting you guys in a situation where I have multiple potential lawsuits because of how he's treating me.
Oh!
And I said I need to speak with Miss Willis because I don't believe she knows. That was, I believe, at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then about 5, he responded back to the PDP by saying, wow, period. This is a problem, period. And
Her boss said that. This guy said that. She reports it to HR. He puts her on a yeah. And the guy responds, he says, wow, period. This is a problem, period. Oh my God. This is, wow, this is interesting.
then text me saying, you have a meeting with the DA at 3 p.m.
This is in July of 21 sometime.
Yes, this is July 26th of 2021.
This is less than
And so
6
immediately,
months.
you know, I felt like a weight was lifted. Finally, I'll get to let her know, because I felt like I was trying to, in part, protect her, protect the youth of Fulton County, and just protect the integrity of these grants. And so ultimately at 3 p.m., I went to Miss Willis's office. Judging by Dexter was in this meeting, I could tell that she was already kind of briefed. And I went to, she said something to the effect of, now what's going on? So I went to speak and tell her, I said, I'm concerned about the way the grants, and I think I said something else, and she cut me right off in the middle of my sentence and said, effective immediately, you're going to be moved, and demoted me
I can't.
to the role of file clerk. So immediately,
You went from a department head to a file clerk.
Correct, a program head. So I went from the director of juvenile diversion to a file clerk, which changed not only the function of my job, it changed my schedule, changed my location, it changed, I mean, this is frivolous, but I was taken off the website. I was essentially like banished.
You was taken off the website
for what I saw to be protecting her at the time.
Did she say why you were being demoted?
No, not at that time. The meeting lasted maybe 2 to 5 minutes, because she cut me off immediately and told me I was demoted. So I was kind of left flabbergasted. And I reached back to her that evening via email just to get some clarity. And she then, that was the first time I ever heard that she was saying that she wasn't pleased with my work. And it's important to note, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. I feel like we're already there, but it's important to note that 3 weeks prior to this, she had just asked me to assist in another department. So 3 weeks before, she wasn't dissatisfied with my work. So
it was the guy. It was her boss. It was her boss, because if Fani cared about this, when Amanda first reported it directly to Fani in January or the start of the year or whatever, you're waiting till July to actually talk to Amanda. And the day that you actually talk to her, you're like, hey, you're getting demoted, but I didn't know what was going on because 3 weeks ago, I tried to put you onto a different department. This is such debauchery. Oh my God.
it was shocking to me that suddenly she was dissatisfied with my work the day that I disclosed that I was concerned about the way these funds were being spent.
You have mentioned several times about retaliation. What type of conduct or actions were aimed towards you that you felt were retaliation? This demotion's pretty clear cut, but
Yeah.
were you being treated differently by Mr. Cuffey or Mr. Bond or any other supervisory type employees?
Yes. Treatment as far as, like I said, being disinvited to meetings, just the attitude of when I would ask for things or ask for additional like guidance or feedback, it wouldn't happen. I also, in addition to, well, I sent him an email because he was essentially stifling my work. I was completing tasks that Miss Willis had asked me in previous meetings, and I would be asking him like, hey, did you get this to her? Hey, I've had this done. Did you look over it? I'm waiting for your feedback. And I was just essentially put on the back burner. Also, like the PDP, the demotion was the first act from Miss Willis directly. And then after that, because of the change in my the change in my work schedule and the change in my work location. I had asked for accommodations or a different setting because they were rehabbing the building, and it was causing me some health issues because I have pre-existing existing condition. And I was told no, and told if I brought it up again, it would negatively impact my future evaluations, which would impact my employment. And about an hour later, my laptop was confiscated, so I couldn't work from home even if I wanted to. Um, Sometimes I would come to work and um, now as a file clerk, I would literally be putting thousands of documents into alphabetical order and then creating an Excel spreadsheet. And things
What
would
department were you in as a file clerk? Were you changed to a different department or just removed as program head and kept in that same juvenile justice department?
No, I was moved to record restriction, and then ultimately I became the file clerk liaison between pre-indictment, pre-trial indictment diversion for adults, and the record restriction. So stuff I've never done or have any type
You
of.
did.
Record restriction is what us old guys used to call expungement
Yes.
from your record. Okay, now
Yes, sir.
they restrict your record so people can't see about your prior convictions or charges against you that you've resolved through a pretrial diversion program or first offender plea, something like that.
Yes.
Okay, totally different than what you were trained to do, your interest, your background, and your experience under Paul Howard's office.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I didn't receive any real training, so I couldn't
Wow.
I couldn't go into certain systems. The only thing I could really do is put things in alphabetical order and put them into Excel spreadsheets, and that's what I did. And there was 2 occasions where I came to work, and the over 1,500 documents that I put in alphabetical order were now all in disarray. So things like that, to where it just made coming to work a very anxious event.
Imagine that. Imagine, because they don't train you on anything else. They took her job away. They first diminished the job, put her in a different job, put her with I'll say it, a shit manager, and then put her in the dungeon. Shout out to Marie to do file clerking things. And then on some days when she would have 1,500 documents and she spent the whole day putting them in alphabetical order, she would come to work the next day and sometimes those piles were messed up.
Did you ever have any further conversations with Ms. Willis where you expressed your concerns about the misuse of federal funds?
I did.
Hi,
So on November 19th of 2021, I had an opportunity to speak with Miss Willis again. And because the fact that the first time I spoke with her regarding these funds, I was demoted, I decided to record her.
Oh, this
And
recording.
I think it was just because I was fearful of what type of retaliation even bringing it up would have. But also, again, like my track record with her was the last time I did this, I was demoted. And so I did have a chance to speak with her, and I told her.
Was that an in-person conversation?
It was an in-person
And
conversation.
how did you record that conversation?
On my phone.
All right. Tell us about that conversation.
Yes, sir. I just spoke with her and told her about my concerns with the grants and how I knew that the grants were allocated for a specific purpose, and the way that Mr. Cuffey was essentially stating that he wanted to spend the grants was illegal. It was impossible under the grant. And she said that she didn't disagree with me. And she said she really wanted me to listen to the words that she was saying, that I wasn't necessarily wrong, essentially. And then she proceeded to tell me that Michael Cuffey had failed in her administration, and that everybody who does that essentially pretends to be her friend. And I just went on to say that I felt like there was some, I think I said funny style business going on. And I just wanted to ensure that she knew, and she proceeded to tell me that, things take a long time to get to her. It's new administration. But not once did she ever say that I was wrong. Not once did she ever say that I was off base or that what I was saying was untrue at any point in our conversation. And so that was November 19th. December 7th of 2021. I wrote her an email, and I CC'd Dominique Martinez, who is, I believe, one of the county attorneys. And I just kind of told her, what I had experienced in the office, and that how my treatment had brought me a significant amount of anxiety. I thought that I was going to ultimately retire from the DA's office, and it made a place that I used to be proud of working at hell for me, essentially. I never received a letter back or any
Wow.
notice that she even read it. And then in January, I don't know if you want me to go that far.
Oh, you're doing great. So
Okay.
now you're up to January of 22.
Yes.
So you've been still working there for a year. You just got demoted and essentially harassed in your employment
Yes.
and taken off of websites and cut out of meetings, et cetera. Okay.
Absolutely. And so in December 22nd of 2022, I was actually sent home due to COVID. Somebody was exposed with COVID, and they knew that I was unvaccinated. So I was sent home. And then I got sick. And when I get sick, I get really, really sick. And so I returned back to work on January 12th of 2022 with multiple doctor's letters, because that's what they asked me for.
Prove you weren't contagious with COVID or whatever.
Yes, I was actually told to quarantine for 10 days and then come back. But it was obviously during the holidays because I was sent home on the 22nd. And then I came back on January 12th and January 14th. Oh, on January 12th, I got my leave slip signed and all that good stuff.
We don't know what that means. What's a leave slip?
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. When you leave from work. So I produced my documents from my physician, and then they signed.
Excused absence, basically. You had your doctor's note.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it.
And then January 12th, I made my third. I kind of have to go back. January 12th, I made another request for health related accommodation, but I also, during this time, if I could go back, December 2nd was my first official complaint with the DCRC, which is the.
Okay, we got to slow down on that. That's
Yes.
the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance.
Yes, sir.
Is that a county office?
Yes.
And y'all.
All right, guys, I do have to leave in about 15 minutes. So I'm going to speed it up slightly, but not too much where it's not going to be not a good experience for you guys to hear. So I'm going to speed it up a tad bit because I do have to go soon.
Refer to that as the DCRC is kind of the vernacular in the.
Yes.
It's for county employees.
Yes, sir.
When did you first complain to them?
I first complained to them December 2nd of 2021. And I made another complaint, I believe, on December 18th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then I made my third. Well, let me get to the January 14th. So January 14th, the January 12th email that I sent regarding my health, I CC'd one of my supervisors. At this time now, I have 3 supervisors because I'm working in multiple departments. And on the morning on January 13th, she asked me what it was about. And then January 14th, she asked me into her office just to make sure I was okay. Or so I thought. So I had a discussion with her. I had a pre-arranged meeting with the director of the DCRC, Niger Thomas, at 1 p.m. on January 14th of 2022.
Okay.
Following my conversation with Miss Ramona Toole about
supervisor that you talked to.
Yes, she was my supervisor. I essentially unfortunately told her everything. I just told her, what was going on. I told her about my health issues. I told her about the retaliation. And so following that meeting, I had my prearranged meeting with Miss Niger Thomas. I went to that meeting with Miss Niger Thomas at 1 p.m.
She is the director of the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance.
She was at the time. Now it's Melissa Cathrell, but she was at the time. And I went in there to speak with her about the whistleblowing and how ultimately the whistleblowing led to all this additional retaliation. And I was in her office for probably about 90 minutes.
The whistleblowing was bringing up the misuse of federal funds.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I was in her office for about 90 minutes. While I was in the office with her, I received to my county phone a request for a meeting request for January 18th at 2 p.m. From Miss Willis and Dexter Bond. I told Miss Niger Thomas in that meeting that I did not feel safe going to that meeting by myself. And she said that she would have a member of the Fulton County Human Resources Department accompany me to that meeting.
Wow.
If I didn't feel safe. And I asked.
Did Miss Willis tell you in that phone text the purpose or the reason for the January 18th meeting?
No, it was just it just came to my email from my phone, from my county phone.
So it was an email.
Yes. And so I guess I left that meeting scared, but kind of glad that I felt somebody else was essentially like in my corner to advocate for me. Somebody would be with me at that meeting on the 18th, so I wouldn't be by myself. And I went back to my area and continued on my Excel spreadsheet that I started that morning. About 20 to 25 minutes later.
Here it is. Here it is, guys.
There's like a knock on the side of the thing. And they said, Capers Green, who was the chief investigator for under Miss Willis, he said, Miss Timpson, I got some unfortunate documentation for you. I need you to get your stuff and we're going to walk you out the building. And he handed me my termination letter. And
immediately after you meeting with the director of the Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance Division.
Yes.
You think she ratted you out or told them that you were making these complaints?
I believe that Ramona Toole in the conversation that we had that morning went directly to Miss Willis. And I think that it's possible that Niger Thomas said something. I cannot speak to that. But I think it's more likely that Ramona Toole, who is a good friend and ally of Miss Willis, must have went to her office and let her know that I told her what was going on. And ultimately I was walked out of the building by 7 armed investigators and given a letter that was completely, it just says that I'm an at-will
an employee at will,
and that my services were no longer needed.
Did you have a reason for your termination?
They did not include, I didn't receive a separation letter for almost 2 months because
oh
they
my
give that to me, but when they did, it just said employee discharge. So I had no understanding to this day because ultimately the PDP that Cuffy had written was Ms. Willis did say that was null and void. He didn't follow proper channels. There was no documentation. So there was no, I have never received a warning in the almost 4 years that I was at the DA's office. In fact, the opposite. I have received praises from both Ms. Willis and Mr. Howard my entire time at the DA's office. I've never required or received any disciplinary action on any level outside of the retaliation and ultimate termination from my job.
What are the DA's office's rules about retaliation for raising issues or whistleblowing or bringing irregularities to their attention? Does the DA's office have a personnel policy or is it covered by Fulton County's personnel policy?
My understanding is, well, at the time that I was fired, under Ms. Willis, they didn't have an employee handbook. That was something that was still being worked on. So there was no policy. So we fell under the Fulton County policy, and under Fulton County policy, it's my understanding that it's unlawful just like it is in the state of Georgia to retaliate against, demote, or provide any adverse employment actions against somebody who is blowing the whistle.
Amanda.
And after that, you're out of work.
So yes, after that, I'm out of work. As a last attempt at retaliation, the time that I had been out sick was now reported as leave without pay. That's what they classified it under. So I was on it for a while until I was able to correct it with Fulton County outside of the DA's office. So they took over, I think it was $4,000 of leave without pay. They kept me on as an active employee without pay. So I was unable to get any unemployment. And so just to keep myself and my family afloat, we had to tap into my retirement. Once my complaint was actually filed, Ms. Willis made completely slanderous and libelous statements against me. So anybody that that essentially Googled me for a job would ask me in interviews, what is this about? And anybody who's ever hired anybody knows that it's already a gamble. So if somebody in a position of authority is saying that this person is inadequate, they may likely believe that. So it made my life extremely hard.
Yeah.
And my family's life extremely hard.
Bet.
And just, you know, for me, I'm here today to fight for my reputation, to fight for the youth of Fulton County, but
Go,
also for the
Amanda.
truth, because, you know, I did everything that Fulton County
Can y'all
requires
type
me to do
Amanda
to
in the
be
chat?
essentially protected. I did everything that the DA's office requires you to be protected, and I wasn't every step of the way.
How many jobs did you apply to?
I to get the job that I'm at now, I applied to over 1,000 jobs just so somebody would hear me enough for me to be able to get back into a position that was even halfway comparable to what what I did before. And I've been, I worked it like I was working a 9 to 5. I applied and I made sure that every single day I was intentional about what I was doing so that I could mitigate what had been done to me and make sure that me and my family were okay.
How many months were you out of work?
I think total it was 5, but then after that, it was the initial job that I got was just a floater job, essentially to make sure, we didn't lose our home and stuff. And but it took me until September of 2023 to land a job that was comparable to what I had at the DA's office.
And you ultimately filed a whistleblower lawsuit.
I did.
And
Good.
that's Mr. Mario Williams is your attorney here with you today.
Correct.
Is he handling that lawsuit for you as well?
He is.
I'm going to ask him some questions, and we're going to take a short little break. You have mentioned a number of documents. You've got a gigantic stack of them there in your notebook.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to review some of that, and there's a few that I'm going to get the Secretary of the Senate to make copies of that we may want in evidence before this committee.
Yes, sir.
And when you come back, I'll have you identify those, and we'll mark them, and we'll send them out to members of the committee. Everybody can have one. We'll make sure that they don't contain confidential information that would be disparaging to you or embarrassing in any way. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's take about a 5 or 10 minute break, and we'll be back. And
Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I really have to go at the height of this. Number one, let me just show you this. It's so funny. I have my law books all over the place. The one that's literally behind me. 1 second. The one that is behind me is cases on employment law. I kid you not. God works in mysterious ways. This book, I haven't touched since I took the class. I took HR law. Amanda has cases on cases on cases, and it was literally just sitting right here as a decorative item. From what I've learned in my time with this one. So real quick, I'm going to read some quick supers. I'm going to go to the biggest one. I wish I had more time. Shout out to High Value Man. Y'all already did it, but do me a favor and type HVM in the chat. He is now the stream sponsor. Shout out to Mike in 10, who hit us with 100. And I'm going to keep you as a stream sponsor, Mike in 10. And I'm just going to add High Value Man as well. Quick note as well, guys, as you are typing in High Value Man, do me a big favor because I have a ton of Fani videos coming. Like I said, it's not over. It's not over. This is just the Democratic primary. There's so much that's come out. Me and my editor have been busy. We've been strategizing all morning. There's a bunch of other news that is coming out as well. I still got some Misha tea for y'all. Wait till we get in that. But I think the news of this week is actually Amanda, because Amanda has her lawsuits. She is ready to go in front of Congress, right? But like, look at Jim Jordan was right to call her a brave whistleblower. Super right to call her that. HVM, thank you so much for all that you do for me, my community, the lead attorneys community, so many communities. A note on notifications, and he has just reminded me, guys, do me a favor. Where it says subscribe, if you're watching this on YouTube or for under your phone, click to see the notification bell. Make sure your notifications are set to all and not customized. YouTube will automatically put it to customize. I don't know why they do that. Put it to all. HVM in particular didn't get this notification. He has done this like 2 or 3 times. This is a YouTube thing, not a me thing. So I'm really sorry that happened. And we'll go from there. Shout out to Michael, who's giving me $5. He says, good evening, AV. Keep it up. What can happen to Fani due to this hearing? We'll see. I think that this is a probe with multiple things. Last time this committee came together, they were looking at finances, and now they're talking to Amanda. So there's a lot more, and I feel like they're going to continue to probe. All right. So hopefully that answers the question. Shout out to Dionara. I'm getting better at saying your name. 199. He says Fulton love fraud Fani. I mean, apparently they do. Shout out to a young Black economist who's been a member for 2 months. Thank you so much. So happy you're a part of the community. Means so much to me. Shout out to Candy Yates, 1999. She says, hey sis, I know this will be good. Looking cute today. Thank you so much. Shout out to D again. D comes back. He says, AV, if you get the chance to read the rules for radicals, it will give you insights into the elitist mindset. Well, I'm gonna check it out. I totally will. Shout out to Rodney Woods the second. That's tradition. $9.99. Thank you so much. No comment, no question. Pure love of the game. Huge supporter of me and the lead attorney. I see you in these spaces all the time. Rodney Woods, that's tradition. It's heritage. We love you. Thank you so much for being here. Nina, $50. Super, super, super generous of you. She says you are much appreciated due to your due diligence delivering law in layman's language. Keep rising to the top. I mean, Nina, did you see this? Nina, this was crazy. This was crazy. Shout out to Nick Starro. Nick, LawTuber, already shouted him out, and he saw this already and mentioned he does employment law in Sweden. He says, Fani is a madam. Does she run a brothel? If so, she is bad at it since she had to pay Nathan to do her. Nick with the shenanigans. Thank you so much. And he sends the Swedish bucks. Thank you so much for the 50 Swedish bucks. I really appreciate that. And guys, check out Nick. Mods, if you could drop his link, that'd be fantastic. And CJC with the $4.99 super sticker. I'm so sorry I have to rush out of here, guys. But we will be back. There's a ton. Editor is working on, we're doing a legal warfare video. I have the Misha video. That's probably going to be alive, to be honest. I'm going to do a part 2 to this because I don't have time for Senator Jones today. Y'all saw him feverishly writing. I don't have time for him today. But this was an important thing for us to watch. And if you want to parse it out, watch it on rewind, go to the beginning. If you came in the middle, it's such an important thing. And I think while we're getting distracted with the Fani stuff in other places, this is just too important. Listen, I love you guys. Stay safe out there. There's a lot more work we have to do. I will see you in the next one. Bye.